Hi, this is going to be a short video follow-up to the Chapter 5 video lecture where we talked about why the transition to agriculture can be considered the worst mistake that humans ever made. And in that video, I made kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment when we were talking about how the transition to agriculture leads to fairly rapid population growth. And I said that it was all women's fault. I know some of you may have been like, what? But it was a tongue-in-cheek comment. However, having said that, there's a certain amount of truth to it. Not that it's women's fault, but that the transition to agriculture led to some specific changes that directly affected women's reproduction. And obviously, when you talk about population growth, your limiting factor in how fast a population can grow is both the number of women you have and how rapidly they can reproduce. So I wanted to explain a little bit about why it's all women's fault. Please understand, tongue-in-cheek. So this is how it works. There are two things that we're kind of going to look at. One is how early in her life a woman reaches sexual maturity so she can start to reproduce. And second is once a woman has given birth, how long does it take for her to get pregnant again and give birth to her next child? It's called the birth interval. In foraging societies, women tend to reach sexual maturity in their late teens. The reason for this, the reasons are pretty diverse, but specifically to our conversation, the reasons are linked to the fact that in order for a woman to be reproductive, to reach sexual maturity, her body has to accumulate a particular level of body fat, and not just a particular level of body fat, but a particular kind of body fat. Because of the active lifestyle and because of the diet that foragers eat, women tend to not accumulate that body fat very rapidly. So usually, on average, a woman in a foraging society will reach sexual maturity and have her first child at around age 18. And in addition to that, once a woman has a child in a foraging society, she tends to breastfeed that child for longer than we do in agricultural societies, oftentimes breastfeeding for 3 or 4 years. Breastfeeding is a natural ovulation suppressant, so it makes it harder for a woman to get pregnant. And you combine that with the fact that she also has to reaccumulate that specific kind of body fat, and it takes longer to do that. So in foraging societies, there's a natural birth spacing that occurs of about 4 years. So a woman will get pregnant, and then about 4 years will pass before she has her next child. Now we look at agricultural societies. In agricultural societies, among the many consequences, we're sedentary, so we don't move around nearly as much. We're not nearly as active as foragers are, and our diet is nowhere near as diverse, and because it's so much more focused on specific plant crops. We have far more carbohydrates in our diet, far more fats in our diets. So in agricultural societies, women reach sexual maturity earlier. They accumulate that body fat that they need much earlier. On average, a woman reaches sexual maturity in an agricultural society around age 14. And absent any contraceptive methods, she'll start giving birth at around age 14. And because in farming societies, we do not breastfeed. Women do not tend to breastfeed as long as foragers do for a whole host of reasons, both social and because we are able to offer alternatives to breast milk to children. The natural birth spacing in farming communities is 2 years. So what you have is this situation where women are reaching sexual maturity 4 years earlier on average, and they're having babies, for all intents and purposes, twice as fast. So obviously, the population is going to grow. And that illustrates one of the challenges of agriculture, that if our early ancestors were transitioning to agriculture because they faced this sort of immediate challenge of needing to find food, but one of the consequences of doing that was that their population began to grow faster because women were reaching sexual maturity earlier, then the pressure to become more intensively agricultural becomes even more intense, and it becomes this positive feedback loop where you transition to agriculture a little bit, and it starts this process where you need to do more and more agriculture and depend on it more and more in order to feed your growing population. So, as I said, my comment was tongue-in-cheek. It's certainly not women's fault. As we all know, it takes two to tango. However, agriculture does have these very specific consequences for women's reproduction that do directly impact the very rapid population growth that we see in farming communities. And as I said, that's an idea that we're going to return to several times over the course of the last half of the class, because there are many elements within the cultural section of the course that are related to that. As always, if you have any thoughts or questions or comments on this video, please feel free to post them in the discussion. I would certainly be interested in hearing your thoughts. Have a great day.